Chapter 25, Message Sent. We knew that by the time we returned home, that about 14 years or more might have passed, and there wasn't much we could do about that fact now. This was an unknown science, and as we traveled, we were still learning. My best calculation would be 14 years and around 9 days, give or take. And if I was wrong, it would be closer to 30 or so years since we left. The message is ready to send, Mike. Great job, baby. We were both excited and apprehensive. This was kind of a joy that can't be truly explained because of the knowledge we held. Now we were going to go home, but there were still unknowns about light speed and beyond, and fear was always present in the back of our minds. The greeting signal was only 4 words, so only our crew would know it was us, and hopefully if anyone else was listening, they wouldn't figure out that there was a message there. It was simply repeating Magic Square 1200. Magic's nickname, in a sense, was code because it meant a square containing rows and columns of numbers arranged in such a way that each horizontal, vertical, diagonal line had the same sum. If picked up, it would make no sense to anyone but the crew. They would quickly decipher the message, while others, if they picked it up, would play with numbers in a square puzzle that meant nothing. I knew that Magic would figure it out if they received it. 1200 was the number, and that is how they would figure out where we went. 1200 light years. This would be all they needed to know if they were listening. Because my crew was smart, they would figure it out as far as the time factors we would be experiencing. It would repeat that whole sequence 100 times, then quit and do it spaced out to compensate for our speed. It was simple and deceptive at the same time. We would send it when we topped out, and we would do it also before we topped out. We had to know if this would work. When it was done, we wouldn't worry about it anymore for now. We had about 5 minutes left before we formed a wormhole when Amy spoke up. "Hug me." The clock ticked down, then a flash, some tunneling, and re-entry into darkness. It was like a great abyss. Then we appeared a few seconds later in a new but familiar star system. Still embraced, not saying anything of what just had passed, we stared in wonderment at our screens, and we felt grateful that we were still alive and re-entering our solar system. We both reached our climax of amazement, not knowing how much time had passed in between the systems during the jump. We both noticed the gas giant appearing on our screens, and it was a pleasant feeling that came upon us as we passed Neptune. We suddenly excitedly snapped to, as we both realized that home was but a few hours away now. We got busy as we looked at each other with this look which I can't quite explain, relief, apprehension, but at the same time quizzical about the changes we would see back home. We never had to ask as we read each other's mind, knowing we felt the same emotions and thoughts. We had hoped that the message was received at least 6 years before we got there. We knew that they might have given up if too many years had passed by. The chance of them receiving it might not be in our favor, but we had no other option but to continue, which in itself was a little scary. We hoped, since we had discovered these new laws of physics, maybe the message sent at the point of passing the light barrier would double its speed to Earth, since radio waves travel at about the speed of light to begin with. but we had no idea if such a signal at that speed could even be sensed or recognized. If it was received years before we arrived back home to those that received it, that might prove another theory, which has even more implications, like, at that speed we became like light, and then possibly a higher energy form, or converted into pure energy, and we knew that time was conserved and it might be reversed. But those ideas were for later, and a later experiment. Everything was still on autopilot, and as we both strapped into our seats at our consoles, still wondering about the many possible outcomes of our situation, this is when we came up with a new idea. I asked Amy if she thought that her mental abilities could reach the crew members back on Earth. "Can you send them a mental message?" I asked. "I don't know, but I could try," she said, as we passed by Mars and behind the moon. She went into a meditative state as I said, "I'm going to go check our trajectory to see if there would be anything in our path, as we're getting too close to the orbital plane now." "Okay," was all she said then. I found from the computer's diagram that we would plane out just behind Mars and beyond the asteroid belt, but we would really be close. I knew that our radar system wouldn't pick up smaller objects till we were on top of them, and this happened very quickly. So I stayed alert as we approached. "I tried," Amy suddenly said as she came out of her attempt to contact our friends. "I couldn't pick up their thoughts. I tried everything I could, so I sent them my thoughts anyway. Maybe that might work, but there's no way I could know." "What did you try to say?" I asked. "I gave them the impression to check their receivers for a message in a few hours." "Do you think they got it?" "I hope they got it. I sent it with a really strong subliminal message ahead of it. I hope they will check it out, but at this distance, your guess is as good as mine." "What was the subliminal part?" I asked. "Space sex," she blurted. As I laughed, I said, "That should have worked at least for Drew." "Okay, here's what I know. This is what we'll do later. We'll send a radio message when we get close to our moon, so the powers that are now in control won't know where we've been and how far out we can actually travel." That is what we decided on, but it gave us a great anxiety to be quiet till then. We ate and sat and talked, wondered about so much. Amy asked, "How advanced do you think they are now since we've been gone?" "I don't know. 14 years at least have gone by. They probably have cell phones down in size, better chips, processor chips, who knows? They already might have what we have and have even advanced our own creation. There's no telling." Amy must have read my mind. As she turned and listened in on the Earth's transmissions, even from here we should pick up something. She tried to tune for a while, then she eventually turned and said, "There's nothing on the radio, nothing on any bands." "No way," I said. "There has to be something. How about the TV?" "No, there is nothing. Nothing except a repeating beep on shortwave. It might be the distance, but there's nothing on VHF or UHF, and nothing on analog. At all." "That's odd," I said. I watched the computer scanning the different radio channels at Amy's console. It would stop on an incoming signal, but there was none except one. It was only a beep on one spot of the shortwave channel. "What is that?" I asked. "I don't know, but it's like a beacon. Its duration is 3.14 seconds. She added, "The duration is pi. From this distance, I can't tell where yet." It was then that the radar screen signaled a warning. "What is it?" she asked. "We're headed straight for a fairly sizable asteroid at the edge of this belt." She asked, what will happen if we keep going? I don't know. Our force field's tip hasn't hit it yet, but it would be better if it was off to the side so that we could nudge by it. But dead on? I don't know. Unknown. At this speed, really unknown. The little rocks and dust get pushed to the side. The faster we go, the longer the point of our field, and the longer the field, the more distance and that angle to deflect objects. But at this speed, it's unknown, apparently. That's why it's warning us. What do you think will happen? If it deflects, it might be our trajectory that's deflected because it has a greater mass than we do. Would this throw us off course? Don't know. We haven't seen this problem till now because we're braking slowly, so I think we should go into manual override and steer around it. Then I would have to re-enter the coordinates to Earth after. Can you do that? Yes, but at this proximity, we might still miss Earth if I'm not fast enough, and you know me with math. Do it, she said earnestly. Just as I reached the keyboard, the screen blinked off and right back on with a new course showing all the old and generated with new lines back to Earth, which showed the change. Look, I said, Carl programmed the autopilot to do it automatically even at this speed, and this time it's working as planned. Thank God that second hard drive is okay. We then sat back in our chairs and relaxed, and then Amy said, when I see those guys, I'm going to kiss them. You're not going to be jealous, are you? Hell no, I'm going to kiss them too. She then asked, what do you think at light speed, if something is in front of us, when or if this happens, what do you think it does? I don't know for sure, but it must do the same thing. I think the same thing happens when we're tunneling through space, in that what it looks like, with all the turns and changes we see, is when the wormhole starts to develop beyond that speed, the computer program senses the force field and steers us around any obstacle. Thank Carl. The asteroid was thousands of miles away still, but on the computer screen it was approaching fast, and its proximity was clicking off on the screen in increments of miles away. So we watched it all as the flyby afforded us a grand view of it. It was amazing to see a remnant of the early solar system. It was incredibly awesome as it rotated. I was interested in the metals on it or in it, and I wondered, and this thought came from the gold miner still in me, I wondered how much is in there. As we approached it, I looked at it through our telescope. I could see that it had millions of years to collect dust, and that would be all we would see coating it. But the pings from the radar might tell us what its core was made of, but we couldn't know till we compared signatures of other radar information from back home. It was a grand sight as we passed it. At the distance we were at, you could almost reach out and touch it. We were steadily slowing down as we entered the orbital plane of Mars, and we could see it clearly, but it was thousands of miles away in its path around the sun. Through our telescope, it was nevertheless the grandest real-life view anybody has ever seen. It was somehow quietly ancient, as if death had passed over it hundreds of thousands of years ago. The computer screen showed us the amount of distance till we reached the next object, which was the moon of our planet, then orbital insertion of Earth, which was slightly more than 4 hours at this speed. At which point I asked Amy, do you want a nap or eat? No way, we're too close now. Besides, I'm going to scan the airways again before I transmit our initial message You know that it needs to be sent as we come up from behind the moon as planned. We planned this just the same way we did in the beginning for the media and the world. Timing, baby, timing. Yeah, she was nervous now. I couldn't blame her. I don't think I could sleep either right now. I just simply said, just checking, my love. I can't sleep or eat either. We dreamed of what we would do once all the hoopla was over with. This helped pass time and keep us from stressing. We also knew in our hearts and minds we would be going back to Kepler system to explore it because we promised the Crotons we would. We also explained to them that they wouldn't see us till at least 7 or more years of time had passed, and that their years would be around 14 or so. We explained why the best we could. It was somewhere as we approached the moon when I turned the telescope towards Earth again to have a look from this distance. It still was small and a hazy bluish-white color, but it didn't quite look right. I didn't say anything, so I asked Amy how it was going with her scan. It took her a few seconds, then she answered. She seemed slightly shocked as I was. There's one channel that has some chatter, but it's indistinguishable right now. But it is people talking back and forth. The beeping is still there. I don't know what it means. Why repeat pi? My instincts started to kick in, but I said nothing and I kept my thoughts hidden. So I asked her if she had the message ready to be sent. She said no. Just about, though. As we approached our moon, all right then, 25 minutes left for that. I asked her, you're the comm expert, what do you think about all this? It might mean there's a new way to communicate, or that everything is done with cable or phone line, which is shielded, or microwave. I don't know yet. So we worked and waited till the right time for our plan to start. Next, Chapter 26, Second Message.